Opening. Yo, what's up?
What's up?
So as I was saying, hello everyone out there. As I was saying, the Hollywood Squares, Paul Lynn was fed some of those lines, and I was like, "What?"
That shatters your
It
whole
totally
image
shattered me
of
because I just thought that he was just so brilliant, and he
right.
was. I mean, he was, and he was
Yeah,
very, very funny. And obviously, somebody could feed you a line, but your timing still has to be on. You
exactly.
have to know how to say it. He's got to be funny. So I mean, there's that element of it, But I, for some reason, thought that it was all improvised at all times, but apparently, it was not.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh man, that's kind of. But it is what it is. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show. We this is gonna be our last show for a couple of weeks. I'm moving to another place, and my wife finally just had enough. So I found
She
a
said,
little
"John, we're
boring.
moving to California."
No, she asked me to move. She's staying. I found a nice little YM. Why? I'm gonna be renting a room. No, I'm just kidding. But we're moving to another place, and so that's gonna take a few. And also, I called up to try to transfer my cable, and somebody still has cable over there at the place. So I'm like, okay, well, so they got to cancel it first, then I can move it. I don't know how that works. So I know that's what I was like. I'm like, why would that? But it said on the system, it said someone already has service at this address. I was like, probably. You're probably right about that, AT&T. Right. I appreciate the information. But I want my stuff over there now. I want them to be taken out because I'm moving in. So anyway, I got to work on that this week. I already did the address change. I did all the bunch of other changes and stuff. So yeah, so we're doing that. So it's going to be a couple of weeks before I get up and running. It might be sooner. Georgia and I can pretty much, at a moment's notice, we can just be live and do a show if we wanted to. So we'll see how that goes. But a tough week since we've been away. We were away last weekend. Just a really rough week that we had, where we had the senseless killing of that young lady. That was tragic.
Mm-hmm.
The school shooting, and then Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
I mean, what a horrific week.
Yeah.
My mom used to tell me stories about when I was born, and it was never a real thing to me because I didn't know what was going on, but she told me how when I was born, 1968, and it was the year that Martin Luther King was assassinated, and then Robert Kennedy was assassinated that same year.
That's right.
It was the war going on. There was the country was in a turmoil, and my mom said she never really knew if there was going to be a world war. The country was in complete panic and disarray. There were riots after Martin Luther King was assassinated. There were riots in the streets. California burned. I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy time. And then here I am, my mom now bringing me into this world. And she just always felt like, man, I can't believe that I'm bringing you into this world. She told me,
Right.
And so I think now of our current situation, our current scene, the current administration and what they're dealing with, the different parties and their views, and then Charlie Kirk, a peaceful family man talking about Jesus and having an open dialogue for people. His whole mission, just to talk a little bit about him, his whole mission was to have open dialogue. That was his base.
Yeah.
His whole foundation, the whole point of Turning Point USA was to have open dialogue.
Right.
This is why he went to the universities and he put up a microphone anyone can come and talk. And yes, he was a great debater, but he was only a great debater because he was 100% confident in what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
He had 100% faith in his religion, in his family, in the people around him. He did not fear that he was going to be wrong because in his eyes he was always right. He was
Right.
looking at something. But he also, I've seen also you know, chats with him with people where he stopped and he said, "Oh, you know what? That's interesting that you said that. You know, he actually listened."
Yeah.
Um, and his assassination from a coward that assassinated him, a coward, low life individual who is just the lowest of the lows in humanity is when you kill someone who's actually trying to do good.
Right. Yep.
And for those of you who are not on the side of thinking that he does good, it's because you've been fooled, you've been lied to, and you haven't really done the research. I've seen hundreds of hours of Charlie Kirk, whether it's been on Instagram, on YouTube, on his website, 1 hour, 2 hour conversations that he does on his live show, when he had his live show. And I could never find one piece of racist comment, not
Yep.
one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
if anybody went out and did this on their own, you would also find that you cannot find one piece of racist comment. And so this was it hit a lot of people hard. They can hit people harder than they even thought something
Agreed.
like this would. Like George and I were talking before we went on, we were not, we didn't have Charlie Kirk attire and shirts and belonged to, and paid for the memberships. Although that went up, it went from 1 point something million followers to 10 million after it. But it hit in hard because he was such an innocent guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't a radical guy that you would think, well, yeah, the way he spoke, I can understand, you know what I mean? But he just never spoke that way. And that to me was the shocking part.
Agree. I completely agree. And again, I followed him more in the last year or two after the election and stuff like that. I mean, I always kind of knew of him and saw clips and things like that. But, I watched the show here and there when I could. But the campus stuff was really where I got into it. Because I enjoyed his spirited debates. I enjoyed what he, how he did it. I enjoyed how he educated, but also how he approached it. He approached it like, let's have this dialogue and stuff like that. But you never see this. Nobody does that.
And I think when you do that, you open the door for people to really see how weak an argument can be.
Exactly.
And when you have hundreds of people being shown how weak they are with their arguments, and someone just pointing out their belief, and two, he even fought for gay rights. Like somebody was like arguing with him, and he was like, he's fighting for the gay rights. He's telling the person, what is it business of yours what somebody does? He goes, well, it's again, aren't you a Christian? He's like, yeah, I am a Christian, but I also understand that people have their rights to live their lives.
Absolutely.
And so it really made no sense. And when you really shed a lot of light on that, it angers those individuals. This is why there's so much hate and violence on that side of the aisle.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm no longer on that side of the aisle for the last 10 years, because I was scared that I might become that. I grew up around violence. I don't want to become a violent guy. I don't want to hate. I don't want to be part of a group that hates people. Mm-hmm. That to me it's just disgusting. And being someone that saw hate firsthand growing up and saw people that hated each other firsthand and killed each other, and seeing people that actually did kill each other, I just feel that I didn't want to be part of that. And it's sort of like, do you follow Jesse Pearson? He's a black guy. He's a minister for a church, and older
nice.
guy, but he's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But he's he's black, and he'll talk people to people. He'll be like, "Don't you think that the white man has done better than the black man on this planet?" And they flip. They go, "What?" He goes, "It's true. I mean, look, you have to look at what they do. You go to any black community, the communities are falling apart, and they cannot take it.
That's funny.
But he was talking, and he said something that was interesting to me. But he said, I have love in my heart. I don't want to open it up to hate.
Yeah.
So I can't be part of that group. I'm afraid of that.
Absolutely.
I don't want the devil on my side.
Right.
And I think the devil is on that side right now. It may shift.
Yeah.
It probably has shifted throughout, parties, division.
Mhm.
The whole point is, divide and conquer, right? That is the goal of the enemy. So they're just pinning everyone against everyone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one side was very different at one point, and then it shifted. That now this side that's on, it's unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it, like this. I never seen the argument of like, what is a woman? These kinds of arguments that you never ever ever thought. Can a man get pregnant? Absolutely. Never in a million years did I think that we would come to this point, even though scholars and historians have said that in the future this might be a part of it. George what's his name?
George Orwell.
Orwell said that.
Yeah.
And others. So it's just very, very interesting what's happening right now. And just to pay some tribute to Charlie Kirk, a good man, family man, a religious man, a man of God, a man who was, I mean, he spoke of his faith not like someone who speaks of their faith who says they are that but never goes to church.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because everybody,
Yeah. No,
say,
he lived it. He lived it.
he lived it.
Yes.
He
Yes.
lived it 100%.
Right.
So may he rest in peace. May his family be safe and held in our prayers and in our thoughts, and his spirit. I'm sure he's in a happy place, doing well, and it's just very, very frustrating.
Yeah, I know.
And you no violence in the streets, no riots in the streets after his assassination.
Right.
But yet you got, I mean, he was a great man, but he's no Floyd. I'm just kidding. But I mean,
Wow.
riots in the streets all over the place when that happened.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Because this is an excuse to vandalize and to be irresponsible. So as a Puerto Rican, and this is part of what our show is about today, as a matter of fact. So welcome to the show, everyone. If you're watching this far into this episode, whether you're watching on the live now or whether you're going to watch this in 10 years, what we say today will be true today, was true yesterday, and is going to be true tomorrow. George and I are Puerto Rican. We are from the Bronx, and one of the things that George and I talk about a lot, and probably not even directly, it's just sort of like it's part of our content, is the fact that we were different growing up. We had a different idea of what it meant to be alive, to be an artist, to be a creative person. We didn't grow up being Puerto Rican. We were Puerto Rican.
Right.
That was just who we were.
Right.
But it didn't identify us. We were artists first. We were creators. We like to be funny. We like to tell jokes. We like to be, even controversial. Even back then, we were looking at things that people were, not really watching much. I mean, we were listening to the blues. We were listening to artists that really nobody really was listening to, and so we knew that there was a difference in us and the direction that we were going. And now that we're older, now that we have kids, where we now see the importance of what we've actually been able to accomplish. And as we were talking about your grandma, who I think was a big part of that.
Right.
For me anyway, growing up, she was the first one out of the 11 kids that, the brothers and sisters, my grandmother being your grandmother's sister, Um, they were, they were. She was the first one to go to school.
Yeah.
She was the only one to go to school
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
graduate and get an actual like, education.
Yeah.
And she was able. She had a job. She had like a real job. Like there were a lot of things going on back then that um we were not we did not understand. People were
Mhm.
doing certain jobs, whatever. But when you went to, she worked at a bank, and I would go to the bank to my grandma because she used to notarize things for my grandma.
Right.
When I would go to the bank, you know, she had like her office. She was like the head.
Yeah.
She was the head person for the boss of the bank
Right.
in the Bronx. She dressed really well. She was beautiful. All of our if you look at pictures of our grandmas when they were young, they were like
Yeah.
gorgeous. They
Right.
had those porcelain features and all that beautiful, great hair, and so she was beautiful and she was dressed. And we would go there, and I'd be intimidated. I'd be like, such an office, in the middle of the South Bronx, and here's this office, this bank. But then she was able to buy a house.
Right.
Matter of fact, we took her apartment when she moved out. We moved into 304, 1058 Southern Boulevard, apartment 304. We used to live in what were we living before? We were living in 401,
Hmm.
and then we moved to 304. After she moved out, we took that apartment, and she bought a house. And I remember going to the house for the first time. Dude, I don't think I ever saw a house.
Wow.
I don't think I never been in somebody's house. Why would I be in? I was in tenements. It was in the projects. Then I was in 1240 Westchester Avenue. I was in 1107 Bryan Avenue.
Right.
Then 1058 Southern Boulevard, where I lived in 3 different apartments in there. Yeah, I never went to a house. That was the first house where there were stairs. You open the door, you go in, and only one family lives in this 2-floor house. That I was amazed, with a yard and a
Yeah.
little bit of land where your grandpa used to grow all
Yep. He
these
has
vegetables.
garden and everything.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I mean, you could talk more about that.
No, isn't it? It is amazing when you're a kid, or at least me as a kid, and I was very sheltered as a kid. You don't, for some reason, it never dawned on me. When you're a kid, a little kid, you just think this is it, right? I mean, yeah, I was young. Like when I was born, my parents were in an apartment, but soon after that, they bought the house with my grandmother, right? They bought that whole property. So I grew up really in a house.
Yeah, it was
But
2 houses. That's right.
when I remember, what I remember was because of that, growing up in that house. But as a kid, it's like you don't think about it. You don't get this concept of not everybody grows up this way. Not everybody doesn't see a house. I just thought this was normal.
Right.
Just look at my grandmother. My grandmother, there were times where like she would pick me up and like from school and stuff like that, or she would take a half day or whatever, because the school was not far from where the bank was, and she would bring me to McDonald's and we would have lunch. I was a little kid in St. John's, and I'll never forget it. We were having lunch, but I'm thinking to myself,
It's the McDonald's on Southern Boulevard.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we would have McDonald's in there, and my grandmother was dressed really nice, and I'm like, and I think back to it now, I was like, I never understood it back then, that my grandmother was in a position that you would never think of, I never grasped that until I got older.
Yeah. And it must have been a sight to see her dressed that way, walking down those
Yes.
streets with you.
Yes.
It must have been like, oh, she's like the rich one.
Right. Exactly.
Like she's, and it's funny because, and I won't say any names of certain people, but I remember having conversations with some of our cousins
Mhm.
from another grandma,
Right.
not my grandma or your grandma, from another, when they lived on Westchester Avenue somewhere. And I remember when he said, he goes, oh yeah, no, I don't go up there. They all think they're fancy up there with their houses. And I remember thinking, I was young, but I just remember thinking like that was not the right viewpoint.
Right.
I mean, I was young, but I knew that was not okay to alienate people because they're doing well.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It was like, well, why didn't you do well?
Right. Exactly.
What
Exactly.
happened? You know what I mean? Are you blaming them for you're not doing well or
Hmm.
whatever it is? And most of the time is alcohol and drugs and that stuff. It hit our family like it hits a lot of people's families growing up. Um, but that house going there, it was the first time that I realized that you can have a house in the Bronx because I
Yeah.
didn't know any other place but the Bronx. So
Right.
if people were talking about, if somebody says, yeah, they moved down to Florida, I'm thinking like they moved to another country.
Right.
Florida? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Where is that? I don't even know what direction that's in. It was just the Bronx, and for me, it was like just that area that we grew up in. It was Bryan Avenue, Westchester Avenue, Southern Boulevard. What was it? Freeman Street,
Hmm.
Hoe Avenue, where the church was on,
Yeah.
167. That was my world. So anything else outside of that didn't make any sense to me. And I never saw a house. So the fact that this was a house in the Bronx, and then for years later, after I got a little older, I mean older like teenager, I guess, I would ride my bike all the time to go to your grandma's house. I would ride my
Yeah.
bike to grandma's, and I rode my bike pretty much until I moved out of the Bronx. I think I rode that bike, you know, um, for a long, long time to that house, and I would just go hang out. And your grandma always made great food, and so I would eat there also. And it was just, but we were talking about generational shift, and I tell you, that was a generational shift for me
Yeah.
personally. And even though I didn't live there, I did sleep there. We had
Yeah.
sleepovers and stuff
Hmm.
when John was there and stuff. But for me, it was a big thing because it made me realize there is a possibility to have a better
Right.
place. You can
Absolutely.
have a better thing. You don't have to be, in the current state, whatever that is. Um, and this is the kind of thing that George and I talk about constantly now, is about being that generational, having the generational responsibility of shifting the family into a better state.
Yeah.
And it's more not even a better state, but it's more of a better viewpoints,
Yes. Yes.
hopeful viewpoints.
Yeah. And but you know what? I think people also they there's this automatic idea of people that they have to, when they say education, right? They say, well, these people must be educated, right? They must have gone to college, and we've talked about this many, many times. But they have this viewpoint of you have to go to college, or you have to, get educated in the terms of being book smart in order to
Right.
get that,
Right.
right? And I'm not saying it helps, yes, but to me, it's more of an education in terms of awareness, in terms of, exactly like you said, being aware of the fact that where you came from is not where you have to end up. And to
Correct.
me, that goes beyond book smart. you
Yeah.
know that's that awareness that you can do things. That's awareness that you can work hard and do, regardless if you went to school or not, right? A lot of people on the street that I lived in the Bronx who had houses, they didn't go to college.
Right.
They weren't college graduates, but they were able to get themselves into that position,
Yeah.
and have a house and raise kids there and do all of these things. So, but I just kind of want to separate that, because it's like I said, the education piece in terms of college, yeah, it does help, but it's not the only way.
Yeah. I think it also does trap you into a very limited thing. Like
Yes.
education is, you know, unless it's a doctor or a lawyer or something specific of that nature, exactly what direction you're going into. But educating in college, for instance, like if you get something in liberal arts or something like that, well, you don't really have anything. You just have more education in things.
Right.
It's not really anything particular, anything specific.
Yeah.
So it narrows you down into
Yeah.
only one area.
Exactly.
Whereas if you have more of an open understanding of, like, you have opportunities that are out there that you may not, either trade schools, which are now luckily now on the uprise again, because it's sort of like, who's gonna fix everything? AI ain't gonna fix your plumbing.
That's true.
Sorry, AI ain't gonna fix your air conditioner. AI ain't gonna fix your car. It ain't gonna do certain things. It just can't. It never can. It never will
Mm-hmm.
do those things. You need still physical bodies for those things. And so it's having the open mind. So the generational shift or the generational uh, viewpoints that I'd like to instill into my kids is for them to look at opportunities and to look at the world. Who influences them? I was influenced very young at musicians and different music. I was influenced by Mr. Rogers was a big influence on me growing up. I mean, I've always said that Mr. Rogers basically raised me. Like he had a way of talking to the camera that made you think he was talking to you.
Exactly.
And I felt that,
Right.
and those lessons and all that just really stuck with me.
Right.
So there, but I was able to look at that and live life looking at life, not
Right.
in a with blinders on or in a fog or anything. I mean, I wasn't as clear-headed as I am today, but I was obviously a little bit more aware than the general people. People were just kind of, hey, what's for dinner, and I was looking. I was
Right.
like looking. I was like looking at people. I was listening to conversations. I was hearing my family talk and seeing how they laughed. I was watching movies and listening to music and hearing dialogue and really focusing on life and drawing from life what I wanted my life to be.
Right.
And that's what I want to give my kids. I want them to be able to look at life and not be told by us what they should be, what they
Yes.
should be, or what they should become, but look for things that they're interested in,
Yeah.
and then we'll help them in that direction.
Right.
Whatever that is. But yeah, we do have to separate a little bit of that, the education thing. But statistically, and anybody that has a college degree will tell you, statistically, you make a certain percentage, 20% more income, 30% in the long run, if you have a college degree. But the percentage of people that get jobs and things that they don't need, they didn't even go to school for, is even higher than that.
No, it's high. Yeah, definitely.
So we're looking at what we're basically saying is we're saying that you can get a degree, get a job, get to make more money, that then you're going to leave to go do something else.
Right.
Something you probably should have done from the beginning.
Yes.
And I think that's where the energy that we try to give out as much as we possibly can is in that, to that degree. We want people to understand that you really look at what you're doing and what decisions that you're going to make, because what you do today is going to affect your tomorrow. And if you're listening, like me, I don't listen to anybody, right? And that's whenever I do, and this is one for one, and I'm not even being funny about this, but when someone tells me you should do this and do that, and I go do that, 99.999% of the time, it sucks.
Right.
I fail.
Right.
I don't like it. I end up suffering from it. And then I end up having to do what? Go back and repair and start over again.
Yes.
And it's like so annoying. And even when I watch, what were we going to say?
No, I was just going to kind of piggyback on that, but
yeah, I was going to say, even when I watch people on YouTube or watch them on different channels or whatever, give advice on stuff, I still have to look at it with a grain of salt, because I'm like, that might be good for that person. I like this idea. I like this idea. I'll put this into my little mix and I'll mix that up, and that's what I'm drinking.
Yeah.
But I take from what's real to me.
Exactly.
And it's usually instant.
Yes.
Usually instant. Someone says, hey, you guys, you should make a movie about this. Instantly, I'm like, that's not a good idea.
Right.
And I don't say it, but I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. I already know, and really being in touch with your knowingness, with who you are, is the key to happiness. When you really know who you are and you're not influenced by others, and you're able to stand your ground and hold your position on whatever it is you want to get done, is a superpower.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny you say that, because I get, I sometimes I've gotten in over the years flack for that exact concept, because I'm the same way. I don't listen to anybody necessarily, and And not that when a person's telling me, let's say family member, because that's what it's usually, family member, they're not trying to do it in a negative way. I get that. Okay.
Mm.
But just because you did it, and just because this is the way it's always been done, that doesn't mean that that's the way I have to do it. Or
Right.
that doesn't mean that's the way it has to be done here in this house, just because you did it in your house.
Right.
And, I'm notorious for that, because I always say, I take the information and I say, okay, is this relevant? Do I need, and I go, no, no, this is not, doesn't resonate with me.
Right.
I have to be the one, and maybe I'm a control freak in that way, but I have to be the one to come to that decision, myself, or come to my own conclusion of what I'm going to do. And this is because I feel it, it's inside. And I mean, you and I, John, have even, okay, we'll go back, right? Probably you were my first big mentor, right? Because when you stepped in, right? My dad really wasn't around. You stepped in, you brought music into my life, even though music has always been in my life, but you brought a different thing to my life in terms of actually experiencing music and playing music and all this. So you became that influence to me. And John, Uncle John, was also that too, because he was kind of the father figure. So both of you were in there doing that. But you were the first person that actually made me say I maybe be okay with questioning things and saying, wait, I don't have to do it that way.
Right.
I don't have to be exactly what everybody in my family was. I don't have to.
And I was
be a
very
teacher.
popular in your family.
No, of course, and everybody hated you. But the point is, but you know what? I look back at it and I go, it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have followed my passions. I wouldn't have been a musician. I wouldn't be doing this.
No,
right?
definitely
Because these things followed their path, their progression,
right.
their passion, their whole thing. And then it's interesting because then, John, you later in even in our development, as we hung out and did things and stuff, you tried to introduce me to some philosophies on your end. And I had to step back and say, you know what, maybe that's not true for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I have to come to that when I'm ready,
Right.
So, and even with you, I did that. I was like, you know what? Yeah. Right
because
now,
that's what you try to develop.
Exactly.
You want to develop the full.
Yes.
You don't want me to be the mentor to then tell you everything, and then now you're the
Exactly.
mentor, so I'm gonna listen to the mentor. No, it was the whole idea was to question everything.
Right.
If it makes you feel good, it's your item.
Exactly.
If it makes you feel questionable, question it.
Yes.
Get more research, study more, read more, understand. It's like nutrition.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we were doing nutriments, right? It's filled with sugar. It's toxic. It's the worst thing you can drink, but it said nutriment on it. We didn't figure that out till much later.
Yeah.
Why do I feel fat and bloated whenever I drink this thing? Why do I have the runs? All that stuff that you get, but you question things and you become more, then you become better at questioning things.
Right.
That makes sense. You become better at and not in a negative way, but looking at things more objectively. But, people are uncomfortable when people are doing something that's different.
Yes.
And
yes.
Because you not only are making things different for you, you're making things different for them. You're shaking them up in their own foundation. You're shaking their foundation to a certain degree, because that's what people do. That's what artists do, right? Artists are influencers, and they shift society, right? They change the viewpoints of society. A culture is only as great as its artists, and its artists are, I can't, I'm paraphrasing it, but it's a L. Ron Hubbard quote, right? And artists shift the viewpoints of people, So when you're a creative person and you're questioning something, well, you're shaking all of their foundations too. And that there's nothing worse to someone that does not want change.
Yes.
And does not want something different. No, you go to school, You get married, you get the house, you get the job, you work for 50 years, you retire, you go to Florida, you die.
Yeah.
That's the plan. That's
Yeah.
what you do. Stop trying to change it. Why you got to be different? Well, that is what my kids are very, very independent.
Hmm.
My kids are very independent. They already know daddy's not going to say no if I want to try to do something different or if I want to quit something.
Right.
Like, I like this like my brother, well, my son was jumping rope, right?
Hmm.
And we all loved his jump rope and stuff like that. And he got a little tired of it, and he's like, I don't want to do it anymore. All right, no problem. I'm not gonna give him a hard time. I loved when he jumped rope, but he doesn't want to do it anymore, so that's totally fine.
Right.
So there's that element of it too.
Yeah.
And it's giving that openness to be able to, and in guiding them. Obviously, you want to make sure that they don't, hang out with the wrong crowd, because there are people out there, but if you teach them well enough of how to observe a person's tone level and
Hmm.
what that is and
Yes.
what are the characteristics of that, and this is something that they're studying even right now. They were just on studying today on course. They can look at someone and be like, I know that is
Yeah.
a problem.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
know that is not, even though it looks like they're trying not to be that way. And we don't hang out around people like that anyway. But just when they get older, they're going to have those tools that are going to be better for them. And these are all things that um, are generational,
Yes.
shift,
Right.
and, my mom gave me that.
Right.
See, my mom was the different one in my family. My mom was, my mom spoke perfect English.
Hmm.
My mom loved music. She loved country music, which is got me into country music, and I'm living in Nashville now, so it's perfect. Um, she introduced me to you know films.
Right.
She introduced me to early movies. She said, you should watch this movie. I would watch these films and be like, wow, that was amazing. These old, and she was very, very supportive. And she would always say the same thing: you can do whatever you want to do in life as long as you're willing to work hard.
Right.
That was her line.
Yep.
You can do whatever you want, but you have to be willing to work hard. As long as you put your mind to it, that's what she would say. You have to put your mind to it. And she would say that she never ever questioned anything that I ever wanted to try to do.
Hmm.
Whether it was music or even when I film, even though she passed when I was just started in film, but she saw a couple of early things. She was super 100% supportive. She came to our shows. Remember when we were
Yes, you did.
playing in the
That's
band
right.
with George, and she would
Hmm.
come to our shows. Um, so she kind of gave me that ability to feel like I can think differently. I
Yes.
don't have to be in this environment.
Right.
This environment is telling me to get a job at Pathmark, or to get a job at Food Town, or on Southern Boulevard in one of the shops,
Yeah.
and that was what you did. You got a job there. And if you're lucky enough and smart enough, maybe you can get a job at the post office, or get a job at one of those jobs. Nothing wrong with any of these jobs,
Yeah.
but she opened my eyes to the possibility that I could do other things, and I can move forward in a way that not many around me were doing, and she
And,
made it okay.
and it's a freeing thing, because going back to, and going back to when I got into music and I started doing all these things, and I literally kind of shifted away from my family. And when I say shifted away, meaning that they saw that I wasn't going to go into the same direction that they were going in.
Right.
That, we talked a little bit about this before. They looked at me differently.
Yeah.
Of course, they
Because we're
blamed
different.
you. They blamed you, but they looked at, but I was looked at.
You know what? I am so proud to take that blame,
But
because
they, but
sitting here right now, looking at you, I'm like, to me, that's a win.
yeah, no,
I'm
absolutely,
chalking it up as John won, even though
and
John
it's
was looked at.
it's a weird thing, because, and again, generationally, right? Because now with this mentality, this new mentality that I had, going, getting into my 20s and 30s and stuff like that, I'm like, wow, if I have a kid, I have a chance of changing her mentality, or having her starting off right,
Right.
Because when I started off, I was going in a certain direction. All of a sudden, I got pulled this way. But this just happens that this was perfect for me. This was exactly what was in my heart, and I just didn't know how to express it.
Yeah.
And now, boom, I'm there. But now I have a kid, and now I'm like, okay, here you go. You know what I'm saying? The world is your palette, and do your thing. And she's doing it, and she's got that. And just like the same thing, independence up the wazoo. I mean, this girl literally is like, bye, mom and dad. I'm making my life. You know, she's already
Yeah.
has that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, you know, it's a scary thing, but at the same time, you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is
Exactly
really
right.
how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, it really is, and we're living in a society now where, you know, being soft is acceptable.
right,
Being a beta male is the right thing.
right,
Being the eighth place trophies
yeah,
are totally acceptable, and it should be the way it is, and everyone should get it. I was watching a clip with Sebastian, the comedian, Sebastian Maniscalco. I can never pronounce his last name, but one of the funniest comedians. And but he does some behind the scenes stories and stuff, and he's at a ball game,
right,
and he looks up at the score, and the score is 10-2. His son's team is getting demolished,
right.
and then it goes up again, and it's like 14-2, right? He looks up again, and it's 10-2 again. He's like, wait, what happened to the score? He goes, they take the
Oh
points
my
off,
god,
so they don't make the kids feel bad that they're losing. I mean, what
that's
are we doing?
insane. That's insane.
What are we doing?
That's insane.
What are we doing? We're not creating achievers, high achievers. That's what they do.
Wow.
That's what they do, and they think that they're doing the right thing. They think why? Because the people that are doing it are the weak ones.
Yeah.
It's the generation that came up with the eighth place trophies.
Yeah.
So they're just pushing that onto their kids. And now any smart kid is going to look up and goes, especially from the winning team, like, wait a minute, how is it 10-2 when I scored 10 points myself? And I know we scored more, and I know he scored 3, you scored 5.
Right.
How is it, they were getting demolished,
Right.
Here in Tennessee, they got none of
Yeah.
That's, my son played in a basketball team, and he had a ball. He did like two seasons or something of it. And, one game his team lost 34 to like 2 or something, 34-4, some
Yeah.
ridiculous amount, And then he came up and I was like, hey, he goes, yeah, you got to dribble the ball, right? And he was like, yeah. And it was fine. He didn't care.
Yeah.
You think that's going to affect him that he's like, I lost? No, he doesn't care. And at that age, and then they grow up to be competitive.
Yes.
And it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay. You want to have competitive. I mean, if we didn't have Microsoft and Apple, what are we going to have? We need to have Nike. We need to have Adidas so they can compete. We need to have Walgreens and CVS so they can compete. We need to have Pepsi and Coke so they can compete. You know what I mean? We need to have competition, and it's okay to encourage your kids to be competitive, but also be good sports. Don't be jerks about it.
Right.
But be competitive, and it's all right. And if you lose, you lick your wounds and you go try again later. Somebody won. It's
exactly.
Okay.
It's funny that you say that because my daughter played softball and basketball, and her whole thing was like she would get up. Our team would lose a lot. They weren't as good as these like elite high schools that were that their focus was like so much on the sports. I mean, her team was, some seasons were pretty good, and then some seasons were terrible. So so she would be like, Dad, oh, we lost so bad today. And I'm like, that's all right. That's okay. But then her and I would talk, and I said, listen, I said, you're going to lose games, right? There are going to be teams that are going to kick your butt. I said, but you know what? I said, you know what? I said, we would talk about her performance. I said, but what do you want to do to help your team? She says, well, I want to score. I want to do all these. I said, well, let's focus on that. Let's focus on making you good. like
Yeah.
really good. Let's focus. So, no matter what, you're gonna put 100% out there. You're
Yeah.
gonna really. And she was like, all right. So, thousands of fly balls that I threw her, and we went to the batting cage hundreds of times, right? And she took free throws, hundreds and hundreds of free throws, and all that, right? And I said, you're going to do the best you can, even if you guys lose. That's okay. You're
Yeah.
still going to do the best you can, and you're going to score, and you're going to do. And she got that mentality because I kept drilling it into her.
Yeah.
Okay, basketball rookie of the year.
Wow.
Okay, baseball MVP.
Wow.
And in her last season as a senior, she was MVP of that team.
Oh my
Okay.
God. I mean, if that
Okay.
doesn't tell you the right way of doing it, nothing else
Exactly.
will. I mean, that
And
is it right there.
and it's funny because I kept telling her in the beginning of the season, I said, you're gonna win MVP this year. She goes, she looked at me with this look. I said, you are gonna win MVP this year. Trust me. And she was
Wow.
like, and she won it. I had we took the trophies, and I was like, I almost cried.
Yeah,
I
I
was
would have
like,
cried. I almost sat with that.
unbelievable. But
Oh,
it's that, she has that
yeah.
now, that
Yeah.
competitive spirit, and she
Yeah.
knows that personal drive, because she's going to take that and she's going to bring it to law. She's going to bring it to school. She's going to bring it to
It's
work
life.
and all
Yeah.
these things. Right.
Just life in general.
Exactly.
It's having an optimistic viewpoint to life.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing that I think you and I can give our kids and our future grandkids and so on, is that idea that you have. And even this video that we're watching, that we're recording right now, maybe nobody is watching it right now, a few people come in and out. It's out there for prosperity. It'll be there, and if people watch this right now, our great grandkids are watching this right now. If you're out there watching this right now, just know that we believe that you can do it. We
Right.
believe in ourselves. We believed that we can move our where we were to wherever we wanted to be, and a much higher
Right.
state.
Right.
And we can operate at a much higher state, because we know we have the abilities to do that, and we know you all have the abilities to do that. So for me, this is a part of the joy that I get by doing this show and talking and stuff, and being able to have the freedom to say what I want to say when I want to say it, whether it's, and I know we're on certain networks right now, which we're going to be leaving, but we're going to be with certain things you can't say, but I enjoy the freedoms of being who I really am. And that's one of the things we didn't have social media when we were kids, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
you were who you were, and that's who you were, and everybody could talk
Exactly.
about you behind your back. That was a sport. People
Right.
talking about you behind your back, that was a sport. In today's world, they post things online, right? Or they'll post their viewpoints online, and then we can, post a rebuttal. But that was part of the way you had to be different, in order to get out of that environment. And I remember people, listen, I got people that are still living over there, and God bless them, they made it go right to have lives for themselves, but
Mhm.
I knew that I was not going to be living in that area. I
Yeah.
knew something was going to happen. Why? Because I kept saying it to myself. I kept dreaming about it. I kept
Exactly.
envisioning it. I had vision, what do you call it? Manifesting the visions and putting all those views out there, and postulates and all that. I had that by the gallons, and just that was always my thing. And it was to play music, to be out of that environment, to be able to walk down the street and not feel like I was going to get shot, which I haven't had that fear. I mean, you always, growing up in the Bronx, you always you always
Yeah.
you keep your eyes open wherever you go. Anyway, I tell that to my family. I said, don't get that overconfident. You know what I mean? But it's not really the South Bronx, in the
Right.
80s, when I'm walking there with my guitar and stuff, and hear gunshots and all the craziness that was going on. So I haven't had that in over 30 years. So I feel blessed, that I was able to do that. And especially for my family, and now moving in, we got a new place that we're moving into. We're excited about that. They'll all have their own rooms, which, that they're excited about that. And, I was thinking about that today, like I never had my own room. Like I
Yeah.
never,
You take it for granted, right?
I never had my own room. I never had I had rooms with my brother. I had rooms with my sisters, my brother. We were all four in one room at one
Right.
point, all four of us when we were in the projects. When I was with my grandma, she gave me a little room but it was attached to my grandpa's room. So it wasn't really like my own room because they had like didn't have a door. It just had a big opening.
Right.
And so I didn't really have, my own room until when I went to my grandma's house on 503. I had a room there.
Okay.
I had a room there, but then my mom moved in with all the kids, and then that lasted maybe, I don't know, a few months or something. But I never really had a room, and when I moved as an adult into New York City, into Manhattan, and I lived with roommates, I had my own room, and I was like, as an adult, it's different, but as a kid, you want your own room as a kid, but I didn't experience that. But now as an adult, it was like I was a kid. So I'm putting posters on my wall as like I'm a 25-year-old man putting posters on my wall. It was like, because to me, it was my first room, my first real room, and I enjoyed it, so my kids don't have that. Right now, my son has Michael Jordan on his wall.
Right.
That's what he has now. And my daughter has she's got a lot of little flurry things on her side of the room, and she's got like a Puerto Rican flag over her bed that she pinned up. Yeah, she pinned it like almost like in the four corners on the ceiling, so it kind of comes down like that.
Yeah.
Really, really very creative. So this is something that I think is going to be an ongoing conversation with us. We're going to make sure that our message is clear. We're not pushovers. That's another thing. We're still Puerto Ricans from the Bronx, and
we've seen a lot of crazy stuff.
Seen a lot of crazy stuff. The violence and
I still talk about some of those stories.
Really?
But some of those things that we saw, but it does change you, man.
Well, it gives you perspective, and it gives you the gratitude.
Yes, definitely
of where you currently are.
Yeah.
And so many people that I grew up with that are no longer with us,
right?
Because of they went along with the trappings. They went along with the games. They didn't have the whatever it is that you and I were instilled with. I don't even know what that, to be honest with you. I don't know what that is. It is definitely a God-given thing in my opinion, because one, there was no reason why you and I should even hung out that much. When you look at, I'm a few years older than you, right? 4 or 5 years older than you. So that's a big kind of it's not a big difference now, but it's a big difference when you're
young. Yes.
When you're young. If you're 12 years old and I'm
That's
almost
right.
20 or 12, whatever, 18 years old, that's a big difference,
right.
But when we got to a certain age where music was a big deal for me and for you, there was no reason why that would have happened. And, me having the cojones to get on my bike and ride all the way up to Chatterton, which was not a short ride. It was a good ride, but I did it in rain. I did it in the heat. I did it in the cold weather. But I would do it because it was, George and I had the same viewpoints on stuff. We liked music. We liked watching our TV shows like Star Trek and Bob Ross and all the cooking shows that we would watch and all the stuff that we watched. And then music became like the thing, and we were just obsessed with that. But for some reason we just didn't have the yo-yo kind of mentality that was around us.
Yeah.
The tough guy thing, like I don't, first of all, I'm a short little guy, so I'm not going to go around pretending I was tough, but people did have this view of me that I was some kind of a tough guy, and I think it's probably because I was quiet and I just knew a lot of people. and I knew a lot of crazy people that were my
But the point
friends.
is, you were still able to, even with that, you were still able to stay away from the trappings of the folks around you,
Oh
the
yeah,
stuff that they were doing around, and that's what,
yeah,
that to me is key, because if you wouldn't have done that, who knows if you would be around today, right?
no, yeah, and I,
And you wouldn't have inspired me musically, and
no, not
then
at
I mean,
all. I
I'd
wouldn't
be a
have
different
been,
person.
I wouldn't have been played music, but like I never thought I would take I never took drugs. I
Right?
never smoked.
Neither
I
did I.
never, I did some drinking as I got older. You and I basically like social drinking. Like when we go
Right.
out, we get, we
But
go
when
to
we played, we didn't
when
really
we play.
drink at
No,
all.
we didn't drink at all. I don't want to play. I don't want to play drunk. I could, so, um, but I think people, because I knew a lot of those people, they formulated their own opinions of me, based on that. But I want to make sure that my kids are confident enough to know that if they decide that they want to, um, whatever they decide to do, if they want to take more responsibility in a different area, if they want to quit something, that I want them to be able to come to me, to my wife, and be comfortable with that conversation,
That,
where
yes,
they're not
yes,
gonna we're not gonna tell them, well, you have to stay on this path,
right,
and I think that that was something that, well, like I know you went through it more than I
yes,
did,
that's right.
but you know I was always embarrassed
Yeah.
by other people's success of what they were saying or what they were doing, and
Mhm.
I wasn't really achieving much.
Yeah.
Now I knew that I was going to achieve much, and I'm still not even done. I'll be honest with you. I'm just almost starting, but I'm still looking now at the stuff that I've accomplished, like having wife and kids and moving to another state and the businesses and all the stuff that I've done. I wouldn't have done all that if I had just listened
Exactly.
to reason, to
Yeah.
their reasoning of why I should do certain things. It was
And
just not for me.
it goes back to what we've talked about in the beginning. It's even like the Charlie Kirk thing and all this, having the courage to stand firm on what you know is right and true for yourself, right?
Correct.
That's what you did. And then eventually that's what I did. And I had to be able to look at my family and say, I'm not going that direction.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. I'm doing what's right for me, what feels right for me. Because again, it's all about the feeling. We artists operate on that,
Yeah.
right? We
I mean, that's
operate
what influencers.
on that instinct, on that feeling and stuff like that. So I had to turn around and look at them and say, I love you guys, but I have to do this. I have to
Right.
play my song. I have to, and it changes you, but it actually it really it builds your character
Hmm.
as you get older. And then, like, just like you're doing and what I'm doing with my daughter, we pass that down now, and then our kids will be able to pass that down to their kids.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the whole generational shift.
Yeah. Yeah. There's tremendous joy in the fact of looking back and seeing those crossroads that you run into,
Right.
and saying to yourself today, I took the right road,
Exactly.
because so many people don't.
Mhm.
They take the road that was given to them, or the one that they were just put on
That's right.
and just pushed, say that's the road you're supposed to go on. And resisting doesn't mean that you're difficult. Resisting means that you don't want the norm,
Right.
that you want to make a bigger impact,
Yes.
that there's as an artist, you don't want an artist creates. So if you're saying that going on a path that was laid out, that's a a path that millions of others have walked, the middle class, let's just say the path or whatever you want to call it, um, that's not a creative thing. There's no create there, because it's you already know what's coming. What I love about art is that I have no idea.
Right.
I have no idea
It's a
what I'm
blank
going to do.
slate.
It's
It's
blank slate every single day.
yeah.
And if I'm writing something, or if I'm working on a piece of content or whatever it is, or music, I don't know if how it's gonna turn out. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And these shows that we do right now, interviews that we're doing for people, we don't know. We don't know. We know that there's a certain level of skill that we have that we'll always bring to the table, but we don't know what the show is going to be like. We don't know how the questions are going to be answered. We don't know how we're going to feel that day if we're just doing a show like this where it's just George and I riffing about something. We don't know if the topic is going to be fulfilling enough
Right.
to give us enough to talk about, but being creative, the fact that we're creative, we love to try to come up with ideas to fill the time,
Right.
and we've always had like topics that we thought, I don't know, I write down a couple of things. We always end up having way more.
Yeah.
We could go for another hour.
That's
Like
right.
right now, if George and I, we're at an hour right now, we can go another hour talking about this stuff if I didn't have to pee real badly. I would just
don't do it
go,
now.
go out. Hold on.
Again, John?
Yeah. Well, I got the depends.
Oh, okay. Good.
We can go a whole hour talking about these things. So for me, it's just a joy to be able to look back. And I think that's kind of a thing. We always want to look forward. I saw a thing with Robert Redford. We lost Robert Redford. I want to just also acknowledge his contributions to film. Tremendous contribution. I mean, Sundance alone is one of the most important festivals, entities in film. It really does a lot of great things. And so he's definitely was a powerhouse. But he said something interesting about how he never really looked back.
Mm-hmm.
He always looked forward.
Right.
And it was, but he had to stop a little bit now and kind of look back a little bit because, he was older. It was an older speech, but, it's okay to look back for reference of where you were to where you are. So you can actually see the progression.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people do that. A lot of people, and I know this for a fact because I work in this industry where I talk to a lot of people, and they'll tell me they're upset about where they currently are. And after extensive conversations with them, I then can say, listen, I can formulate a whole pattern for them. I can say, you did this, then you did this. Now you didn't know what was going to happen after that, but you still went and did this. I just had that conversation with my wife, with the same kind of thing. We all go through it. I mean, I need that conversation as well. And when you do that, when you look back for those reasons, it's healthy. When you look back because you're looking at the mistakes, or you're looking at what you should have done and you didn't do, or I should have done this, or I should have done, and you look back for all the mistakes and all the negative things that have happened, that's unhealthy.
Correct.
That's unhealthy.
Correct.
But look back at your successes.
Yes.
And I take this, I tell this to people all the time. Look, I do the still photograph thing that I always talk about. So I always say, take a still photograph of yourself today, of where you stand. And that means your family, your income status, if you want to throw that in there, your location of where you're living, your physical health, your spirituality, your friends, your family, all that stuff. Put it into a photograph and take that photograph and send it to your 10 years ago and show it to that 10-year-old guy, 10-year-old you, or not 10-year-old, but 10 years ago. Show it to yourself, and then show it again, go 20 years, and then go 30 years. And then I go even further. I go when I was 16 years old. 16 was a big year for me because I had a lot of growing up to do in 16 because I had some stuff happen in my life. If I show a photo of my current life to a 16-year-old me, I would be weeping about how happy I know that my life is going to turn out. How great just seeing my kids, seeing my wife, seeing where I live, I have a really nice car. I got like a fancy kind of like a red sportsy kind of car. it's a Honda, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? But people see it and they're like, even Ben's kids see my kid and they're like, boy, your dad must be rich. 'Cause it's the red and it's kind of a sports car, it looks
Right.
sporty. But even if I looked at that at 16 years old, I'm like, oh my God, I am rich. And
Yeah.
right now I
Yeah.
am. I
Yeah.
am incredibly blessed. So, take this exercise and
Absolutely.
look at it, and if you go and you say, you know what, I was better back then than I am now, then now is when you have to start.
That's right.
Start changing your situation now. So in 10 years from now, you can take that photograph and show it to now, and then look at it and be like, wow, I was able to accomplish a lot. You have the abilities to do this. We all do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's just a matter of making that decision. And it's an action thing. It's action. You have to, it's be, do, have.
Right. Yep.
You have to be the thing
Be,
that you want. You have to do the
do it
things, and then
so
you'll
you can
have the
have.
success.
Right.
Right. So, and this goes back, to Confucius time. You know what I mean? Like, it's that old of this thing. You have to have a beingness of what you want to be. So people say, oh, I want to be an actor. No, you are an
You're an
actor.
actor.
You are an actor. Decide you are an actor, so you can then go do the work. And what's the work? Practice, study, take classes, do auditions, do shorts, do self tapes, do your own projects, whatever it is. That's the do, and then you'll have the success. A lot of times we want to do the work, so then we can have the success, so then we can be the thing.
Right.
And
No.
that's all backwards.
And that's what we did. That's what you and I did in music.
Yeah,
Exactly what we did. It's
yeah.
exactly how we did it.
Exactly.
And that's why we were able to, be successful in music and be at that level that we always wanted to be at. Right.
Yep.
You know,
and we say that's true. That's true. That's 100% true. And even today, like with the current things that I'm doing right now, like film and stuff like that, I always look at that as a I compare it to kind of music in a sense, because I for some reason with music, I always thought that I was in film, even though I wasn't making movies, because music is so when I'm writing a song or when I'm playing, it's so cinematic in some way.
Yeah.
So, I had visuals already. I had ideas and then when I'm hearing a song, I can think visually of the song too. I could see that song in a movie. I could see it in an opening of a sequence, and this was way before film. So it was the same thing. So when I became a filmmaker, I was that.
Exactly.
I was that, and it was early on that I was doing things that I was just like, yeah, and people were treating me like I was. Why? Because I had the beingness of that, and it's a simple thing, but if you don't get it, it can be very hard.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to open up to see it and let yourself go and let yourself be free to the idea of just being that thing. And if you do that, you will find success.
100%.
All right, I gotta pee. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We appreciate you all. We will be back in a couple of weeks, maybe sooner. I'm doing a move. I'm moving only 10 minutes away, so it's not like a big move. But I got to move all the internet stuff, and that's what usually takes the longest, is to connect my internet. Now, I could use my phone, so there's a possibility of that. So we will, next couple of days, we'll see what happens, and yeah, we'll be back. But anyway,
and John's gonna pee before the show, just so you know.
Yeah. I'll pee before the show. Actually, I did pee before the show, but I drank a whole thing of coffee.
There you go. Are you drinking coffee at this time? Oh, yeah, that's right. We talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about that already, bro. Come on.
Yeah, I know.
I'm a man.
Yeah, I know. You're a professional.
Professional coffee drinker. And by the way, we're not going to be. We're going to be coming on only on Rumble. So our show will only be on Rumble, and then on the other platforms, we'll have little clips of the current show, of what we can show, just to get people on. So anyway, not that matters if anybody hears this, but if you do, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you all. God bless you all. Have a wonderful week. And as always, peace.
Peace.